Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, for the opportunity to contribute on this debate on a bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending 30th of September 2025. Mr. President, permit me to congratulate Senator Dennis on his maiden contribution. He has proven himself true to form, really a thoroughbred member of the People's National Movement who can speak for his full speaking time and say absolutely nothing. And so he has lived up to all of our expectations, and I'm certain he has lived up to the expectations of his political leader. But and I'm just very grateful that he didn't take 5 hours and, was it 44 minutes? 5 hours and 44 minutes to say absolutely nothing. Because, Mr. President, this budget that we are here and we are talking about today, and you know, they are so critical, and I'll spend some time responding to the Minister of Tourism and also to Senator Dennis, and they are so critical of the concept that an alternative government, the opposition, the duly elected opposition of this country, has actually put forward through our political leader, the member for Superior, a woman with heart and soul and passion for people, has actually put forward better plans than this government has done for the last 10 years. They should be ashamed. They should be ashamed that in 10 years they have not been able to produce real material plans and put forward to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And worse than that, they have not been able to deliver even on the meager plans that they come up with. They have not been able to deliver on them. And I will spend my time going through to show you how they come year after year and promise things and promise allocations and make all sorts of, comments about what they are going to do, and they deliver absolutely nothing. Mr. President, I want to commend my colleagues on this bench for their outstanding contributions. Particularly today we had, again, after our political leader, Senator John, if my political leader is like my political mother, Senator John is my political big sister. And I want to say that Senator John reminded me this morning of something I saw a clip of presidential candidate Kamala Harris speaking about an issue, and she said, we're going to call their names because we have to put names to the people. And Senator John did that this morning. She called the names because I think this government forgets. They forget that this is not a numbers game. Yes. This is not a numbers game. It is about people. So it's not about whether it's 400 murders or 500 murders or we're heading towards 600 murders for this year, you know. It's about the actual people. It's about the children collecting bullets, sitting in the arms of their parents or sleeping in their bed at night. That is what it's about. So I congratulate Senator John for a very passionate contribution today. Because we continue, Mr. President, we continue to stand here and give a voice to the voiceless people of this nation. The people who are the poor, the underprivileged, people who lack access to basic necessities like water and proper housing. We have to highlight, Mr. President, we have to highlight their plight, and we have to show how, because that's what a budget is. A budget is supposed to address the plight of the people. And this budget contains absolutely nothing to address the real plights facing the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Crime is just one of them, but there are many others. But crime is the major one, and it is impossible to speak about crime and not touch on education, social services. This government, they come here and they cry down social interventions like baby grant and milk grant and all of these things. They insult things meant to help women take themselves out of poverty and raise their children. What kind of government is that? What kind of people are you to stand here and criticize things like that given to people? You don't understand that a milk grant is the difference between a 15-year-old boy seeing his siblings hungry and deciding to go and join the gang and pick up the gun and commit a robbery. Yes. That's what they don't understand. They don't see linkages. They don't understand that the milk grant is the difference between the older child, having books to go to school and get an education and not come out there and commit crime. That is what the milk grant is. But it's Kamla milk grant, and that is why they will cry it down, Mr. President. So they don't care about people and the real people, and that is why they could stand here and commend this budget, this vacuous budget that lacks any sort of real promise or possibility to bring this country out from the darkness that it is currently existing in. Mr. President, our comprehensive, all-inclusive plan laid out by the leader of the opposition to rescue and restore Trinidad and Tobago to the paradise that it was between 2010 and 2015 is something that I want to fully commend. And I encourage every right-thinking citizen to go and listen. And I heard this morning, I was trapped in traffic, as usual, coming from San Fernando. And I heard the Minister of Tourism speaking and saying, oh, how are you going to afford this? How are you going to afford it? I'll tell you something, two things. One, we will do it the same way we did it from 2010 to 2015. We will do it the same way that we did it then. But more than that, and the bigger thing, what we will do is we will have proper priorities. We will cut out wastage and we will cut out corruption. And that is the way that we will be able to afford to deliver. Because, Mr. President, we weren't the ones running from procurement legislation.
600 recusals.
And kicked the can down the road as far as we could to avoid it. Right? We are not the ones who, when Senator Jerlene John was in charge of the HDC, had to cancel a whole housing project because somebody, a local contractor, decided to challenge it, and rather than face the OPR and deal with the challenge proceedings, they canceled the whole project. What does that tell you? What does that tell you about what is taking place in this government? The Minister of Tourism stood up and said, this is my 10th budget defending tourism and the sector and culture and the arts. He probably thinks that we forgot that at one point in time, he was the Minister of Housing. And then a certain senator who was sitting there at the time was accused of clearing on lands owned by the HDC, and he ordered an investigation, and suddenly he moved from housing and get put in tourism and didn't get back his seat in San Fernando East.
Oh, Lord, is it? Oh, fella. When you do good, they pelt you out.
That's how it is. That's how it is go. And then they talk about we have Bacchanal and don't talk about them Bacchanal and all kind of thing. All of them were mine and obsessed with my arrow for the last 6 months, but now they come and tell us don't get in our Bacchanal. At least we have a democratic party that will hold elections and give people the ability. They could sit down where they want, stand up where they want, say what they want. They don't have to go, as Senator George said, they don't have to go pusur by the Express and ask for anonymity like if they're in witness protection to talk about what's going on inside the party. We don't have that because we have a leader. And as I listen very carefully to what they talk about, all the attributes of their leader, but you know what they never talked about? They never talked about kindness. And that's what we could talk about in our party. We could talk about kindness in a leader. We could talk about a leader with heart, with generosity. We could talk about a leader who is fair. So we don't have to sit down and accept whatever is handed to us. Right? So, but that's enough of that. I don't need to...
Take small pen.
Yeah. I don't need to waste more time. That's all what you all choose. Senator Dennis came to talk about the record and our record while we were in government. Our record was the lowest crime rate in over 30 years. That was the record of the People's Partnership Administration. Our record was community comfort patrols that gave people a sense of security. Well, let's scrap that. They tried to reintroduce it during COVID and it had some bubble and they had to shut it down again. Our record was that we passed good legislation to ensure that you had proper procurement and disposal of public property. You all brought amendments 3 times to water it down and make it almost ineffective, to remove a whole chunk of government expenditure from oversight. That is your record, not ours.
9 years.
In 9 years, that is what your record is. And you all will hit a new record this year by the looks of it when it comes to crime. Our record is making sure that there was equality in the distribution of resources within this country. I hear Senator Dennis talk about what South contractors. I don't know why it is, and then they come here and they bring one person from Central Trinidad, all of a sudden they think that they love Central Trinidad and they're putting him forward as the, alternative candidate and all of this, etc. But you're coming here to cry down contractors from South Trinidad. So what happened? People from South Trinidad are not people too? We are not citizens of this country? We get treated like second-class citizens by the PNM all the time. We always get treated like second-class citizens. No wonder they put you out of San Fernando East, because you sat down here, Minister of Tourism, and listened to them talking about South contractors getting work in Tobago, as though contractors from South aren't entitled. They are not entitled to put in a tender and to get work in Tobago. That is uncalled for. And I want to say, and they should apologize for that statement about South contractors. Everybody who wants to put in a tender for work in Trinidad and Tobago have an equal right to do so.
Not in his mind.
Under procurement law.
But that's what's happened when you come to Parliament, change a whole law, make 3 new seats, and still get licks and lost the 6 seats you had before. That's why that has happened.
And that's why you need opposition.
That's why I'm talking about what we should do to be in opposition, because he was in opposition and get put in opposition and get put out by the people of Tobago. The people of Tobago rejected the PNM. Overwhelmingly. And then they come here, and the leader of that rejection, of that rejected bunch, has now come here to lecture the UNC.
Bring back Laurel.
To lecture the UNC about what to do and what to say and about South contractors. Mr. President, really, they have nothing to talk about, and that is why they have to come here and bring up all of these things. But let me talk today about, as I said, I want to talk about crime, the number one issue facing this population. Every single day you open a newspaper, all you see, about 3 or 4 pages dedicated every day. Murder, rape, domestic violence, home invasions, and recent times more and more cases of kidnapping and extortion in this country. What is the government doing? Nobody knows. Security tax being imposed by criminals on hard-working business people in this country, Mr. President. And the response we get from the government is, well, you shouldn't pay. You shouldn't do this. Are you coming to keep people safe at night? Are you resourcing the national security agencies sufficiently to be able to keep people safe at night? The answer is a resounding no, Mr. President. Mr. President, last year in the budget, they promised 1,000 new vehicles. They come back this year now, they say, no, it's 2,000 vehicles, but approval for 200 in this year. Where are the vehicles? And the bigger issue than purchasing of vehicles for the TTPS is the maintenance of those vehicles. You have a literal scrapyard of vehicles purchased with the money from the taxpayers of Trinidad and Tobago piling up. We have had issues, I think it's up in Wallerfield somewhere, is where Vimcott have done. In Marabella, right next to the area, Tropical Plaza there's a whole yard full of derelict police vehicles parked up there. An environmental hazard. Just sitting there. They are not repairing the vehicles. When the Vehicle Management Corporation came before, Vimcott came before a joint select committee, they talked about the challenges they were facing from collecting money from state agencies, just like TNTech. Just like TNTech, the biggest people owing TNTech are other state agencies. The biggest headache for Vimcott is just collecting the money from other state agencies. It was so bad that Vimcott was actually falling behind on paying NIS, health surcharge, and PAYE, and remitting their own taxes for their employees to the Board of Inland Revenue. Could you imagine that? Government not paying government, who have to then remit taxes to government. They're in a mess. They are in a complete mess. And nothing, when you talk about they're going to buy 2,000 vehicles for the TTPS, no mention whatsoever on how you plan to fix Vimcott as the first port of call for the agency that will repair and maintain vehicles. So without a plan to repair and maintain the existing fleet, adding vehicles that will eventually just end up in the stockpile of scrap iron, it makes absolutely no sense. And it is not value for money. And that is what budgeting is about. And that is what you expect to hear in a budget debate, about how you will earn money, how you will spend that money, and how you will ensure that the people of Trinidad and Tobago get value for that money that you are spending. And we have heard nothing like that, Mr. Vice President. When it comes to vehicles as well, we have to talk about the Coast Guard. I don't know by what or how it ended up at this stage, but our Coast Guard vehicles, we have one vehicle, one vessel working. One vessel. We have a problem. They had a whole big seminar and conference down at the Hyatt to talk about crime as a public health problem, a public health issue. And we recognize that the influx of guns into this country is what is contributing to the crime problem. The majority of our crime is committed using illegal firearms. 2 or 3 years ago, the SSA put out a statistic. They said they estimated then that there were about 12,000 illegal firearms in Trinidad and Tobago. I could only imagine what number that has arrived at now. Because from that period to now, we have had a breakdown of our Coast Guard patrols, and we have had a breakdown of all of the scanners at our legal ports of entry. So if it cannot come through the illegal port of entry, it will come through the legal ports of entry. In the last budget, we talked about the scanner issue at the ports. We heard about it at the Joint Select Committee on National Security. There was one fixed container scanner working at the port of Port of Spain. Nothing in Point Lisas. The mobile scanners that were donated, they said it was too expensive to service it, so they put them out of commission. Big fanfare. Every time we have budget, every time we have standing finance committee that we have to sit down and listen to the government try to defend the expenditure. Big fanfare, we buying scanner. Accelerated procurement process now for scanner. Scanner coming, first it was sometime January, then we hit August, now we get all the way down to November. How every single day that there's a delay in putting those scanners in place and getting our security at the ports in order is another day for weapons to come in this country to take the life of a child. It is another opportunity for a Harp Place, a repeat of what happened at Harp Place. The Attorney General spoke about the Plans-Based Ministry, and I don't fault him. This is his portfolio. He says that, he has draft legislation that he's going to outlaw the high-powered weapons and so on, AR or whatever type of weapons and all of that. Well, that is all well and good. But you're going to put it on the statute books and outlaw it for what? So that all illegal, so that people can't get a license for it? They don't have license for them. The people who are murdering our children don't have FULs. They don't. And this government has spent an excessive amount of time, energy, money, and no end to the propaganda surrounding investigations into FULs and who have FUL and how much this one have and how much that one have. None of the crime being committed, none of the unsolved murders, none of the children that we have to bury every day in this country were killed using a licensed firearm. So why is that your focus and not securing our borders? Last year, vehicles and equipment purchased, the 2024 estimate, $1.5 million. What was the revised estimate for the Coast Guard? 0. Purchase of specialized equipment, $500,000. What is the revised estimate? 0. Acquisition of a hyperbaric chamber, something I've heard a lot about it. I know in Tobago, at one point in time, they wanted to get one to protect persons and so on. $5 million allocated. Revised estimate, 0. Upgrade to facilities, $3 million allocated. All of this is found, Mr. Vice President, in the development program. The details are there. $3 million for the upgrade to facilities. How much spent? 0. Ask them how much they spend investigating legal firearms and the grant of FULs. They wouldn't be able to tell you that. And they can't talk about that. Every single year under PSIP, they mention porous borders and the issue of porous borders. Every single year we come here and talk about it. Every single year they make allocations, and every single year they have nothing to show for it. They cannot show a single thing that they have done and put in place to really, truly secure our borders. We have had the influx of narcotics, we have had the influx of illegal firearms, we have had an influx of illegal immigrants, all under the watch of this government during the last decade of destruction that they have presided over in this country. And that is why we are in they talk about a state of rot in the UNC. This country is in a state of rot under the PNM. The entire country is in a state of rot under the PNM. You all, perhaps, I don't know, drivers driving you and you're sleeping in the back seat, so you don't pass by every single traffic light and see mothers with children holding up signs begging for money. We did not have that when we were in power, with the prevalence that we have it now. Every ATM you go to withdraw money, there are 3 women sitting down there begging for money, begging for help. Women who could have get milk grants under Kamala Persad-Bissessar, the member for Siparia, and her government. That's what the milk grant used to do for everybody who wants to talk about the milk grant. They would remove those mothers and children from the street begging for money to go into a pharmacy and buy a tin of milk. Or from, I mean, I can't condone it, but I could sympathize sometimes when I see mothers shoplifting to afford school books. There was a news story of a mother, she apologized and so on. And I don't condone what she has done, but she was actually stealing school books. Because when the UNC government, and I'm sure my learned colleague, Senator Gopi Singh, will talk about it, when we had an extensive textbook program implemented throughout all the schools, they wanted
133 million.
133 million for textbooks to make sure that every child had textbooks, and no mother had to send a child to school without textbooks, and no mother had to resort to stealing textbooks. They want to save money on that. To do what? To do what? To travel all over the world?
No, recuse that.
Or for how much $50 million entertainment allowance? Entertainment allowance, $50 million entertainment allowance, but take away textbook rental programs. That is what their priority is. Senator John,
400 days altogether.
yeah, Senator John said it best. Elitist. That is elitism at its highest. You need $50 million to entertain, because you're trying to bring foreign investors and whoever, some people who cannot withstand a little bit of scrutiny. They run. The minute you ask a question about them, they does it, because they cannot withstand scrutiny, just like this government. And those are their friends that they want to bring here as investors. So they need $50 million to entertain, but they don't care about mothers and children having school books and uniforms and milk, a basic thing like milk. I really do sympathize with the people of this country who have to live under these conditions. Mr. President, everywhere I go, people say, and people approach me and they tell me that it is only when they listen to the leader of the opposition speak in Parliament that they feel any sense of hope that this country could come back. That we could come back. Because the PNM created, they do one thing, I'll give them a compliment. They do one good thing. The PNM does one thing with exceptional efficiency and proficiency. No, they create propaganda. They create propaganda and they drown the population. Yeah, they drown the population with propaganda. That is what they do, and they repeat it over and over and over, and that is why people are in the position that they are in now in this country, because they believed in propaganda. They believe when a minister comes and says, we finish a highway, but when you're driving on the road, it have a big crack, and you have to divert around it, and up to now, they will not make the report public, but we have the report, and we know what happened. We know what happened, but they will talk about this highway and this propaganda and how much money they save. They save money, but the highway, a whole section of the highway to Point 14, you cannot drive on it. You have to divert around it, and it's a sort of barrel, and it is a hazard, quite frankly. I go down there every weekend. Let's go to buy doubles on the creek. And every weekend I drive there. Yeah, past the crack by the cremation site. And you always, and I wonder to myself how these people could stand here with a straight face How you could stand here with a straight face and pat yourself on the back and talk about saving money and what you deliver when, even when you cut ribbon, you smile for the media and so on, but everything is defective, everything is deficient, and nothing works. The Minister of Tourism actually stood here with a straight face and talked about the ICC Cricket World Cup in the one, as my colleague Senator Roberts said, the $1 billion stadium that the ICC then had to call the pitch unsatisfactory. Unsatisfactory.
Shame. And 6 hours to reach young lady.
6 hours to reach young, and afterwards people walked. People walked from, they could not even coordinate transportation. People walked from the Brian Lara Stadium to South Park to get back to their vehicle. Everybody, they can't deliver nothing properly, but stand here and talk about successful. You have the international cricketing body of this country calling your $1 billion scandalous stadium.
1.3,
I think, and running because they did some repairs to get it ready. Imagine they spent additional money to get it ready for ICC. Yeah. And they call it unsatisfactory.
And ball only
the coach from Afghanistan said the pitch is dangerous.
Yeah. Ball ratting.
They describe it as dangerous, and you come here to boast about a successful ICC World Cup. I felt ashamed for my country. I felt ashamed, and everybody know I cricket. Well, I didn't say that, right? But I mean, really, everybody know I love cricket. I can't have cricket anywhere in this country, and I'm not there. And I felt very, very ashamed. I felt very ashamed to see what transpired at the end of that Cricket World Cup, having regard to the amount of money, and then to sit here and see them boasting about it. But that is not the only thing. They boast about so many things that they cannot deliver. Mr. President, Mr. Vice President, when it comes to the crime situation, this might be my it's my 5th budget contribution. So let me say it again. It's the same thing I said in my first budget contribution. When you're dealing with crime, you're dealing with prevention. The middle is detection, prosecution, conviction, and then you have to deal with rehabilitation. Let's deal with that middle ground there. You cannot continue to depend on eyewitnesses to convict people in this country, particularly when matters are taking very long to go through the court. It was either today, I think it was this morning or yesterday, I read in the newspaper of a man who, on a retrial, the only evidence the state could put forward after he spent about 2 decades in prison on remand, the only evidence they had was eyewitness evidence from 2 children who said that they witnessed the murder. And the police ended up admitting that they didn't properly investigate his alibi and all these kinds of things. The police didn't. They had arrested an additional, all that's in newspapers today, they arrested another suspect, they swabbed his hands for gunpowder residue, but they let him go before they could get back the results. Now, in my mind, I thought to myself there, imagine if we had rapid forensics and a functional forensic sciences center in this country, how different crime detection could be. And we've said it over and over and over. The last time I asked a question in this parliament about samples be awaiting testing, it was about 9,000. When the Forensic Science Center came before the Joint Select Committee, it was 14,000 samples of different kinds awaiting testing. That is probably translating into, God knows how many, but thousands of cases that cannot be heard. So you could say that we are spending money and we're implementing a JIPA and that will speed up trials and so on. The trial can't go nowhere until you have the forensics. And you can't even do proper detection of criminal, when it comes to crimes, if you don't have proper forensics. Mr. Vice President, in the 2018-2019, and I went back on YouTube, and I'm so grateful for technology, I went back on YouTube to check this because I didn't want to believe what I read in newspapers. I went back and I checked it, the 2018-2019 budget in the Standing Finance Committee. The then Minister of National Security, now acting Prime Minister, said that we had $10 million of free funding for a state-of-the-art Forensic Science Center at Mount Hope. Well, I said that must be, I think they call that kind of art surrealism, because I had to use your imagination to see it. Because from 2018-19 to now, not a blade of grass has been cut on the piece of land that Forensic Science Center is supposed to go down on. We are in 2024, and in 2024, you have employees of the Forensic Science Center filming a leaking refrigerator containing tissue samples with maggots swimming in it being passed to the media. It was reported this year in the media. That is the state of forensics in this country.
Shameful.
That is beyond shameful. It is beyond shameful. And then we expect that these employees of the state will produce evidence that could help us to convict criminals. There was a big boast at one point in time. They say, oh, the whole backlog, this was in 2019, the backlog will come to an end with ballistics training. They train officers and they up in what used to be SWAT, up in Komoto to do ballistics training and so on. Propaganda again. Because when I had the opportunity at the Joint Select Committee on National Security to question them on that, you know what it turned out to be? All they could do is process the bullets and so on, but they still have to go down forensics. They could swab and look for DNA or whatever up at Komoto, but it still has to go down to forensics to complete the report that is necessary in order to progress a matter in the court. So someone told me recently that no group of people could be so incompetent, and it has to be that this is deliberate. It has to be that the way that they run this country is deliberate, because I do not believe that anybody could be so incompetent to not see that you need to fix the way that things operate if you want to get some results. Because you're just running around like headless chickens. We spend our money here, we'll allocate a 10 million there and only spend 1 million. We'll allocate a 9 million there and we'll come back for some funding during the year, but nobody knows and nobody can see the finished product or a result. What is the result? We are heading towards more murders, more suffering, more rapes, more unsolved crimes, and more people waiting for justice before our courts. AJIPA cannot take the place. AJIPA cannot solve the problem of people waiting years and years and years for the state to be ready to progress their matter through the court system if you don't have proper forensics, if the police don't have enough resources at their disposal. All of those things, you have to deal with it, and they are not dealing with it. If the police don't even have vehicles to respond and proper working vehicles to respond. We have to look no further than the fire service to see what is taking place. This year, the fire service, the association came out and they complained about the conditions under which they were working. They want to know why it is they are being so many things. In fact, what the fire service said was that equipment shortages were crippling members. And this is what they came out to the media and said. They said 6 of 11 fire stations in the Northern Division lacked functional appliances to respond to fires nationwide. 9 out of 23 fire stations are similarly incapacitated. This was the Fire Services Association 2nd Division president saying this. Mr. Vice President, how could we sit and talk about our budget and commend ourselves and talk about the fact that we are on what pathway to prosperity when basic things like having a well-equipped fire service so that people are not dying as a result of fires breaking out? How can we talk about pathways to prosperity when our fire service lacks basic equipment? Mr. Vice President, under the PSIP program, only 8.5% of the budgeted estimate for last year was actually spent. $1.6 million, and what was budgeted was about $18.7 million. $18.7 million they budgeted. So they understand the needs. They understand the needs, and that is why, and I heard one of the members say that we're talking about management of the economy, because budgeting is not just about putting down figures in a book. It is about management. It is about releasing the money in time. It is about ensuring. I don't think you pull these figures out of the air. In fact, I know about the budgeting cycle and the process that officers and public officers go through every year. and send in their estimates, and we talk about what they need, and they negotiate, and the PS gets involved and so on, and then you are given an allocation. But what is the sense in understanding and acknowledging that $18.7 million is needed in development funding for our fire service, and you only spend $1.6 million?
Competence, gross incompetence.
That is criminal incompetence. Criminal incompetence. And when you do have a fire appliance that can actually respond, they can't pass on the road. And that is why 2 elderly people were, leave them now, let them talk.
Have some decorum.
Yeah, no, they have none.
They
have
want
none,
Port
that's
of
okay.
Spain, North,
That's why
St. Anne's, West.
they can't expect decorum from people who want to, anyway.
Senator,
So,
you have 5 more minutes remaining.
thank you. So, Mr.
You
Vice
cuss too.
President, there is no,
Don't cuss.
there's a criminal level of incompetence when people are trapped in a house for a fire and you don't have enough appliances to respond in time. And even when you have an appliance, the road is so bad. And it happened in St. Julian Village in Princestown.
Collapse.
It happened there. They could not reach the house of an elderly couple because of the condition of the road. The fire services appliance could not even pass. 2 elderly people burned to death. I wonder sometimes when this government stand here and they talk, if they don't have parents and grandparents and so on, and they don't think about them when you understand how the level of incompetence in the execution of their functions hurt the people of this country.
They just chips when they ask for house,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Right?
Minister, I want a house.
Mr. Vice President, there's no end to the number of initiatives that we have been clamoring for and that the country has been calling for in order to treat with serious issues facing this country. There's one more I want to touch on, and that is the issue of electronic monitoring. Mr. Vice President, and apparently the newly minted Senator Dennis does not pay attention because he came here to say we don't support the bail amendments and so on, that they want to restrict bail.
He is a PNM.
I just want to put on the record that what we did not support was an unconstitutional, illegal type of bail restriction that was ruled by the Privy Council to be illegal, but that when, thanks to us, the government came with a proper piece of legislation that did not interfere with the separation of powers, we, all 6 of us, voted and supported a good law. We supported a good law to restrict, to place parameters on the judicial grant of bail, because that is where the discretion lies with judicial officers, not with the PNM.
Correct.
But the bigger issue to that is you cannot keep people in jail forever. You cannot keep people in jail for 20 years on remand, waiting on a trial, only to be told not guilty and go home because the state only have 2 eyewitnesses and no forensic evidence. And that is what has been happening, and we don't support that. But the solution, and a major solution to that, would be proper electronic monitoring. The UNC, the People's Partnership Government, passed the law. They have been in power for 9 going on 10 years, and in this decade of decay, destruction, and disillusion by the population, we cannot have a proper electronic monitoring unit functional. And it is as simple as this, they like to talk about the reason why we have to restrict bail is because of repeat offenders. Senator Dennis repeated it here today. But it's this simple. If me and Senator Roberts and Senator Naked decide we're going to commit crime somewhere, and we know Senator Naked have an ankle bracelet, we're leaving him home. That's simple as that, And you will cut down on, they might try and go and recruit somebody else. But we wouldn't.
The same one Faris have.
We wouldn't go, you stymie the ability of people to go out and repeat crimes when they are out on bail if they have proper electronic monitoring. I don't know how much more basic I could break that down, because that is just common sense. And when you look at the cost of keeping someone in remand versus the cost of purchasing ankle bracelets and staffing the electronic monitoring unit properly, it makes absolute perfect sense that you would want to put your resources into programs such as those. Mr. Vice President, I know my time is running out, but I just want to say that budgeting has to be about people, and it has to be about solutions. And this budget and the presentation of this budget and every speech coming from the other side has had absolutely no focus on solutions on to make life better for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. And so we say that the PNM and their government, whoever their leader might be, this will be their last.
Yes.
Because people are tired.
No more PNM.
People are fed up. And at the end of the day, it is the people who they do not care about when they bring these budgets and they put them forward are the same ones who will vote them out of office. Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Saddam Hussein.